biggest event of the year, our annual celebration, which is just 5 days away. We're looking forward to celebrating our incredible New Englanders of the Year in person for the first time since 2019 on Monday evening, just around the corner at the new Omni. And Larry has indicated that 210 tables have been sold, 10 at a table. Even Jim Cassetta could add that up. That's a lot of people, he said, I'm sure. So I say thank you on behalf of the staff of the New England Council. Extraordinary support to get almost 2,100 people at our event. And it says an awful lot about the generosity of our members. And we just say thank you, thank you, thank you. Later this month, we'll be continuing our very popular virtual series, Inside the Corner Office. Our guest this month will be Cynthia Hansen of Enbridge. And registration is also open for one of our other most popular events of the year, which is our annual celebration. We hope that you'll be joining us for that at the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the United States Senate on the evening of December 7th. But today we're delighted to welcome back a great friend of the New England Council and a former New Englander of the year himself, Congressman Jim McGovern. For purposes of a very formal introduction, I'm pleased to hand it over to Kristen Lewis of Point 32 Health.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased. It's my pleasure to introduce Chairman McGovern. For more than 25 years, Congressman McGovern has been an elected public servant to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and a true representative of his constituents. As a tireless advocate of human rights, the chairman has committed his life to ensuring that every person is treated with respect and compassion. Whether domestic or international, the congressman ensures that everyone has access to quality, healthy food, and his commitment to the anti-hunger involvement is unparalleled. Most recently, at the end of September, the White House Conference on Hunger and Nutrition was reinstated more than 50 years after the first conference was hosted by the Nixon administration. Congressman McGovern was the leading force that brought together hunger advocates, researchers, policymakers, and farmers to develop a set of recommendations with the aim to end hunger by 2030. Point 32 Health, along with our partners from the Greater Boston Food Bank, Healthcare for All, Health Collaborative, and the New England Council, responded to the call for action by putting together a pilot program for Medicaid beneficiaries and dual-eligible beneficiaries, the most vulnerable of our population, to receive a benefit from the federal government for food, healthy food. Ahead of in addition to serving as chairman of the House Rules Committee, Congressman McGovern is a senior member of the House Committee on Agriculture, Subcommittee on Nutrition and Oversight. We're very pleased to have you here, Chairman McGovern. We really appreciate all the work that you've done on behalf of Massachusetts and the nation. And please join me, everyone, in welcoming the chairman. Thank you.
Well, first of all, let me thank Kristen for the very kind introduction and all the folks at Point 32 Health for sponsoring this breakfast this morning, but also for all the work that you have done to help deal with the real challenge of hunger and food insecurity in the Commonwealth and across the country. And there's a lot of people here who have been working on that issue. And I'm going to make a few brief remarks, and then we can get into questions. But we can then talk about this incredible conference that President Biden hosted at the White House. I also want to thank Jim Brett, my friend, and for many years, and all the folks at New England Council for inviting me here today. I'm in awe of the work of the New England Council, and I'm in awe of the work that you do to advance our shared values and getting us all to work together as a region to make sure that our economy is strong. And these gatherings, I think, are important. And I really appreciate it. You know, I do want to get to questions, and I want to talk about the economy, healthcare, hunger, inflation, supply chains, and all that stuff. But I first wanted to discuss something that I never thought I would ever discuss at a breakfast like this, or ever have to discuss at a breakfast like this, but something that makes all of those things possible, and that is democracy. And, the first time I ever kind of thought about the concept seriously was when I was 13 years old in 1972, and a middle schooler, and there was this guy running for president, George McGovern. I thought he had a great last name, but he was talking about things that as a young middle schooler I was attracted to, ending the war in Vietnam. He talked about ending hunger and about upholding a high standard of human rights and ending poverty and protecting the environment and all these things that just were really appealing to me. So I figured I'd go out and help him become president of the United States. I had some teachers who were working on his campaign. I offered to help out anywhere I could, and I went to the headquarters in Worcester, and I passed out bumper stickers and passed out leaflets and did all I could to elect George McGovern president. And I was overjoyed on election night in 1972 that he won Massachusetts comfortably. A little depressed that he lost 49 other states. But, I was only working in Massachusetts. So, when he lost 49 out of 50 states, he didn't throw a tantrum. He didn't lie or say the election was rigged. He conceded with dignity. I remember watching his speech, wondering how he could possibly give up when so much was on the line. But later on, I realized that his concession wasn't just about his campaign. It was about the kind of man he was, about the kind of country he wanted to pass down to his kids and grandkids, about the importance of our democracy. This is a unique country. We were founded on dissent. Our government was built on the idea that we don't need someone else to rule over us and tell us what to do, but that we can govern ourselves, however messy that process is at times. So many people have fought to make real the promise of America with their blood, sweat, and tears. We honor our veterans, on Veterans Day all the time for their service to our country to protect this unique democracy. And they understood that we were fighting together for the idea that democracy is worth it, that freedom is worth it. But I have never in my life ever seen that idea more under attack. I mean, conspiracy theories, the big lie, political violence, scapegoating, voter suppression, election nullification, attacks on poll workers. We all know how this ends, right? I mean, we saw it in Charlottesville. We saw it on January 6th. We've seen it before 1,000 times in human history. And we're seeing it happen here in America. 147 of my colleagues in the House voted to overturn the 2020 presidential election, a free and fair election by all accounts, challenged in courts all around the country by judges, many of them appointed by Donald Trump. They still voted to overturn the election. 60% of America has an election denier on the ballot next week. 60%. My colleagues and their spouses are getting violently attacked for their political beliefs. And more Americans are becoming radicalized by fringe ideas. The attack on Paul Pelosi is just the latest. And what really is disturbing is not just the attack that somebody was so radicalized that they went out and did this horrible act of violence. But I'm going to be honest with you, what really is disturbing to me is the reaction of so many people that I serve with. I mean, the stuff that's being posted online, the conspiracy theories, these twisted, fantasies that people are putting out there to try to detract away from this truly horrific act. And some of these people I know, I work with, and I'm coming to realize that they're not only misinformed, and they're not only behaving incredibly badly, but to put some of the stuff online, to say some of the stuff that some of them are saying, tells me that they're really rotten people on top of everything else. And, we have to take all of this very, very seriously. A lot of people keep on saying, what does it matter? Politics is rough anyway. Well, it matters because we want to be a decent country. And none of us were raised to behave that way. And democracy matters. And I'll tell you why. I mean, the alternative to this is violence, more violence. For us to fight each other until one side ultimately wins, for political dissidents and activists to be silenced with threats of intimidation and retaliation, and for every election to turn violent, for every transition of power to become lethal. I mean, this is serious right now. And there is no such thing as a Republican American or a Democratic American. I mean, we're all supposed to be Americans. And so those of us who believe that people who disagree with your politics are inherently evil, I think don't understand the ideals and the promise of this country. I was the last person on the House floor on January 6th, and I came face to face with this angry mob. And I will be honest with you, I wasn't mad on January 6th because people broke some glass and put me and my colleagues in danger. I was mad because people wanted to silence the voices of everybody here, of everybody in this country, wanted to overturn a free and fair election. And look, I believe that passionate, loud, and even angry debate is a feature of our democracy, but there is an autocratic and illiberal movement on the far right that is seeking power at the expense of truth. And they are opposed to democracy in every way. And by the way, going along to get along without standing up for what is right makes you just as complicit and just as opposed to democracy. I tell people all the time that the people in Congress that I am most bothered by are not Marjorie Taylor Greene or not Lauren Boebert or Paul Gosar. There's too many of them to go down the list. I mean, I pray that their families stage an intervention and they get the support and the help that they need, right? The people that really bother me are the people who know better, the people who come up to me in the cloakroom or on the floor and say, this is nuts, this is off base, or this is terrible, and then go before cameras and basically mimic what the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world are saying. Liz Cheney and I don't agree on very much of anything. Boy, I admire her guts and her courage for actually taking a stand for the sake of this country. She paid a heavy price. She lost her seat in a primary in Congress. I mean, she could have easily gone along and won re-election overwhelmingly. She chose not to. There are too few Liz Cheneys on the Republican side. I'm looking for the Margaret Chase Smiths, the Republican senator from Maine who had the guts to stand up to Joseph McCarthy. I mean, there's almost none of them. Instead, we have members tweeting and posting crazy conspiracy theories that are just based on nothing. Look, this moment that we're in right now, I think, is different. We are engaged in a struggle right now between fact versus fiction, right versus wrong, freedom versus fascism. And by the way, fascism isn't about a particular set of beliefs or political ideology. It is about power and the lengths to which some people will go to acquire and retain it. And for decades, we fought against that in this country. But today, a growing movement here at home seeks to upend these norms, settle disagreement with violence, silence the truth, and again, spreading the most horrific, vicious garbage online. I mean, we are seeing a rise of hate crimes in this country. We are seeing a rise of anti-Semitism. On my way in here today, one of the news reports is talking about a latest act of anti-Semitism here in Massachusetts. These things aren't just happening by accident. They are being fueled by all of this resentment and this grievance and this hate coming out of our elected officials. And we got to figure out a way to stop it before it's too late, because there's nothing that says that the things that we all value about this country, are here forever. I mean, we have to fight to protect this. And we can't give up, and we can't underestimate the threat that's facing this country right now. But if people who believe conspiracy theories and lies can win, so can those of us who live in reality. It's up to us, I think, to make the case. And I'll just close with this, and then we could have a discussion on anything you want to talk about. But I just felt it's important to say this because I'm watching these elections unfold, and it seems the people who tell the biggest lies are the ones who seem to be doing the best. Look, the one thing I've learned from my many years working for Joe Moakley when I was a staffer to his is he used to tell me all the time, he says, anybody can, point out a problem. And we have politicians, on both sides that do that all the time. Here's the problem, here's the problem, here's the problem. But, the real skill is to tell people what the solution is, like how you got to fix that problem. And so we have a situation right now that we have all these lies and conspiracy theories, and we have people talking about all the problems we have, but they're not telling us what they're going to do to solve them. And if you want to solve problems, it requires people of all political persuasions to sit in a room and to work things out. Some things we can't agree on, and we'll fight those things out, but some things we can. You don't have to agree on everything to agree on something. There's something we agree on, let's just get it done. We're moving away from that. And we're seeing the rise of people who are not interested in solving problems, not interested in helping their constituents. They're interested in Twitter followers, and they're interested in, a segment on Tucker Carlson. And if that's what we decide to, to elevate, then, I don't know what the future of this country is going to be honest with you. And again, if you were to tell me 20 years ago when I got elected that I would ever get up before an audience like this and say, we got to fight for our democracy, I was like, I would never think we would ever have to do that in this country. But we're at that moment, and I think people have to step up and, and push back, because if we don't, we are in for a very, very difficult time. And so, anyway, on that high note, let me just close and open this up for questions.
So we have a couple of minutes for questions, and maybe if you want to start with the non-hunger questions, because we're going to be next door, but if you are inclined to ask a question, because you're unable to make it, we can do that. Any non-hunger questions you might want to ask the chairman? Yeah. Marjorie Aarons Barron.
If the Republicans take control of the House, you have the January 6th committee going away, Jim Jordan being head of Judiciary, and God knows who else heading other committees. What do you expect payback to look like? And what tools and strategies do the Democrats have to fight back?
Yeah, who knows, right? I mean, who knows what what they will do? But look, I mean, we have a delegation here that is well positioned. We are all on key committees. We are all, we all have a great deal of influence, whether we're in the majority or in the minority. And I'm not ready to concede yet that we're not going to be in the majority come Tuesday. But look, we're just going to have to adapt and resist and push back. I mean, if there are things that we can agree on, we'll step up and we'll vote to move things forward. But if there are things that we deplore and that we know are bad for New England and bad for our country, we're going to fight like hell against those policies. Look, I don't even want to begin to think what they might do, because every time I think that they can't possibly be that mean, they are. I mean, I'm just really, shaken by this attempt to smear Paul Pelosi, an 82-year-old man who, get bludgeoned in the skull with a hammer. That somehow that's fair game. I mean, if that's fair, if that's normal, if we allow that to be normalized, then God only knows what they're going to come up with if they take control of the House and or Senate. So, yeah, I mean, the tools we have are, the procedures that are available to us in the House to try to resist and to push back, and our voices, and our commitment to not giving up on this country and not giving up on the things that we care very deeply about in this state.
Other questions? Lisa?
Congressman, obviously the internal threats to democracy
Right.
are real. The internal threats to democracy are real. I'm curious about your perspective on the external threats to democracy that are also significant, be it Russia, China, Iran. How do you think about those things, and what should our strategy be over the next couple of years as these issues are going to unfold?
Yeah, I mean, both Russia and China are threats. I mean, in a whole bunch of ways. I mean, Russia with the misinformation, but also with what they're doing in Ukraine. I mean, I was part of the first delegation. I went with Speaker Pelosi to Kiev and met with President Zelensky right after the war started. And the war that Russia has launched against the Ukrainians is particularly vicious. I mean, there are actually rules of engagement when it comes to war. But Russia is targeting maternity hospitals, civilian apartment buildings, playgrounds. When we were there, they were uncovering mass graves of mostly older people that were, their hands were tied and they were murdered and they were buried in shallow graves. We heard about Putin's soldiers raping young children, and then handing them over to traffickers. And look, the question is, do we care about human rights? And if we do, are we going to do anything about it? And if we're not willing to provide humanitarian assistance and some security assistance to help the Ukrainians be able to defend their country from not just invasion, but from ethnic cleansing, because that's what Putin wants to do. If we're not willing, if we're going to say let it just go, then we don't have the moral authority to speak out against human rights anywhere else in the world. I don't know how all this is going to end. I mean, it could end by Putin just saying, "I'm done," and then we can kind of go back to some sort of, adverse but nonetheless rational relationship. In China, I mean, what they're doing in Hong Kong is unconscionable. What they're doing in Xinjiang, where they're actually committing a genocide against the Uyghurs, is unbelievably horrific. Their ethnic cleansing of Tibetans, what they might do in Taiwan, who knows? But here's the deal. I mean, we live in a world we have to deal with everybody. That doesn't mean we have to be silent when they oppress their people. And I will say this, I'm really a little bit miffed at some of these big financial institutions that just went over to Hong Kong for this big conference like business as usual. I think it sends the exact wrong signal. American corporations have to be willing to take a stand. I get it, China's a big market. I get it, they source a lot of their stuff from China, but you shouldn't be sourcing from companies that utilize slave labor, and you shouldn't go into Hong Kong when they just crushed this pro-democracy movement as if nothing is going on. So we all have, we want to change the behavior of the Chinese. We're going to have to, it's not just about a government reaction. We have to have the business community stand with us. Look, we got to deal with these countries. I get it. There'll be economic relations. I get it. But there's some things, there's a line where I think you can't cross. I passed a bill called the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, basically saying to these companies, you cannot get your materials from Xinjiang. We know that there's slave labor being utilized there. And we got a lot of pushback, a lot of footwear companies and sporting goods companies. And I'm like, God, I mean, I don't want to buy a pair of sneakers made by slave labor. I'll pay a few extra dollars if that's what it is. But I mean, if you don't take a stand, this is going to proliferate. So we need to speak with one voice on that. But I am very worried about both countries. I don't want a World War III, but when they cross the line, we have to take a stand. If we don't, then it's the beginning of more bad things.
Other questions? Deirdre? Savage? Blues?
So, I know we'll do some healthcare and hunger questions in a couple of minutes, but your comments I was down visiting my folks in New York, and my dad's 88. Left Ireland when he was 17. Both of them came here from Ireland. Also named Marty Walsh. Jim loves that. You know, and sometimes seeing this country through the eyes of somebody, he loves this country, became a citizen in the early 70s, and has voted, you know, not just straight line Democrat like my mom. Like my mom's a Kennedy Democrat, boom, boom, there's no. So but he loves this country, you know, like more than I think like a lot of people, and seeing it through that eyes. And has said, like, the greatest day, and you think about all the political moments in this history, greatest day in this country was when Barack Obama was elected. To see that we have the capacity, because again, a lot of ugliness going on before that election, and he said, that's like truly America loved. And he is now, so again, he watches way too much cable news at this age and, you know, whatever else. But he literally has said, like, I just don't know that we get out of it. So I'm trying to be optimist, because again, he's 88, I don't want him, should the end come at one stage, thinking like, we're going to get through this, Dad, like, don't worry. But literally, I'm just like, I have no idea. This feels like it's not a moment. Literally, what can we do? And I feel like Republicans, and I'll just say it, by the way, speaking on my own, not speaking on behalf of a company right now, but they just are better at playing hardball and ugly and things like that. And I say it because I know. And I shouldn't say just Republicans, because that's not
right.
There's lots of Republicans that are not thinking this way, but I just don't know the fight back. Like, what is it? I'm almost paralyzed. I hear the news, and it's the first time it depresses me to go to Washington and think, what if it flips? What about 2024? And so all of these things, and looking at you, thinking about what is it like from a tactic perspective, that the party or others can do to try and reverse, besides, you know, and again, not being anti-media, turning off Fox News, you know, like muting buttons on different things. Yeah. You can't do that.
Yeah, look, I mean, one of the challenges right now, I mean, social media is a blessing and a curse, right? It's a blessing in the fact that we've connected the entire world, and it has helped fuel pro-democracy movements, and it's helped highlight human rights abuses in other countries, and it's helped change things in many ways for the better. It's a curse in that there's no like filter, right? I mean, and you know, depending on who's on social media and what lie or conspiracy theory gets put out there, I mean, no matter how outrageous it is, you know, if you have 1 million followers, getting the truth to catch up to the lie, sometimes it never happens, and so the lie constantly stays out there. And I don't know how you deal with that. I mean, people have said, "Oh, we got to be tougher." Well, I get that, but I mean, I don't want this to become, you know, you tell a lie about me, and I'm going to tell a lie about you, and we're just going to lie about each other forever and ever and ever. There's got to be a better way to do that than kind of fight the way they have fought back. Part of it is we have to be more engaged in, you know, in talking to people in our own kind of orbit. You know, I will tell you, when I told you I was the last person on the floor January 6th, that was on a Wednesday. I came back to Worcester on Saturday. I'm in the Price Chopper, you know, getting my groceries. I'm in the frozen food section. I remember this. A guy, maybe in his 60s, in a business suit. We all had masks on. He comes up, he goes, "You're McGovern, right?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, what happened the other day?" And I'm like, thinking he was being sympathetic. I said, "I know, it's terrible." He goes, "We almost got fooled." And I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, a friend of mine sent me a link." I said, "A link? To what?" He said, the misinformation that was fed to the news media that we all saw on TV about the chaos and the riots, he says, it didn't happen. What really happened was nothing. And the link shows what was actually going on at the Capitol that day. And I was like, "Well, look, I was there. I was there." He goes, "No, you got to look at the link." And I was like, "I was there." "No, you don't understand." And then I said something that he characterized as uncongressional in response to that. But I was like, and I said to my wife, like, how the hell did he get like that? You know, I mean, this is a business person. You know, how do you get like that? How do I ever get you to think differently? And I think that is, you know, that is the challenge here. And so, look, I mean, whether, you know, I'm at a point now where when I go to a family function and I have a cousin who is saying things that, you know, are untrue, and I have a few cousins that do that. In the old days, I would go excuse me, I'm going to get another glass of wine. Now we have a little bit of an interaction. My mother hates it, but you know what? My kids are there. If I don't correct the record, they will think that that is the truth. Going to a Dunkin' Donuts any morning at like between 7 and 8, there's usually about 15 old guys in the corner sitting solving the world's problems, right? I mean, I go into the Dunkin' Donuts in Worcester down by my house, and, you know, they're always like, hey, McGovern. I'm like, and I used to wave and leave, but now we engage. And my wife says to me, first of all, learn to use the drive-through. Secondly, they're never going to vote for you. I said, I know they're not going to vote for me, but here's the deal. If you can point out that they're wrong, if you can give them the facts to show that they're wrong, maybe they won't repeat the lie again because they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to be challenged. And I think we have to get out of our comfort zones, and we have to challenge people in coffee shops, at family functions, wherever we are. Because if we don't, you know, and just assume that, I mean, I used to go through this, you know, this kind of period where I thought, oh, what he just said is so crazy, I'm not going to dignify it with a response, right? Those days are over. We're going to dignify everything with a response, because when you don't, then it settles in. And so we have to ratchet this up. We have to be better truth tellers. We have to challenge things that are wrong, and we have to teach civics better in our schools so that we are raising a generation that actually appreciates the importance of having a democracy. I mean, I got to tell you, I've been to so many countries, you know, that were democratic countries that now have moved toward authoritarianism. I mean, about a month ago, my wife told me, go down to the basement and you have books from middle school there. You know, I'm like, well, I might use them again sometime. And she's like math books. I said, well, who knows, right? And she's like, they don't even teach math like that anymore. So get rid of it, right? And I went down and I found from college, a copy of The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. And I looked through, I highlighted it, I wrote in the margins. I was really a good student, I guess, or it was somebody else's book. But anyway, I started going through it, and it was chilling, because if you change the countries and the names, that a lot of what is going on here, the scapegoating of immigrants, the demonization of the media, you know, the lies, the conspiracy theories. I mean, we've seen this before, right? And I think what is a little bit startling to me is that more people aren't seeing what I think many of us are seeing, or that are not more concerned about it. And, you know, you let this system go, and, you know, it may be good for you depending on who you are in the short term, but sooner or later it gets to the point where, you know, when you cede your democracy, you end up with a government that actually does things that actually hurt you. And then it's too late, right, to be able to do anything about it. And I think that's that really is it's a challenge. I don't know what the message, but I just know we just can't give up, and I don't want people to give up, right? Yeah.
Frank?
Congressman, thank you for your work, and the conversation is really important. And the thing that has always struck me in going to D.C., advocating for Main Street businesses like we are, is I was always surprised by the staff, like how amazing and impactful they are. Is there anything encouraging there? Like, you know, on Main Street we worry about the workforce. Who's next in Washington? Who runs for office?
Well, that's a very good question, because it's not just who runs for Congress and who runs for the Senate. It's who runs to be on the Board of Selectmen, who runs to be on the City Council, who runs to be mayor. I mean, some of the most contentious settings right now are school committee meetings, school board meetings, or town hall meetings, and people are shying away from running because they don't like the confrontation. Yeah, we could disagree, we could have, that's fine. We could debate about an issue, but when you feel threatened, when you're being yelled at, when there's constant recall efforts to get you out, people are like, I mean, we have great staff. I mean, staff, as a former staffer, I will tell you that staff are everything, right? And we need to keep people not just working while I'm there, but working when I'm not, when I'm retired and when the next person comes on board, because we want people with an institutional memory. We want people with expertise in healthcare, or in transportation, or in science, or in, military affairs, whatever it is. And I think a lot of people, we lost a lot of staff after January 6th. A lot of people just left. We had a bunch of interns that their parents said, you can't go to work there anymore. But a lot of staff just left because they just I don't feel safe here. I don't feel secure here. And then I think some have left because they're like, this is the tension and the vitriol and the hate is so intense. It's like, maybe I should do something else and maybe I'll come back at another time. But we need to keep good people there. I mean, we've up staff salaries, so you can. If some staff make more than members of Congress do now, because we don't give ourselves raises because we like to tell everybody that we don't deserve it, because it's a political thing, whatever. But anyways, we've increased the staff. We want to keep people there, but we also want some of these people to run, and I think if any of you here are watching how some of these campaigns are unfolding, and any of you are thinking about, do I want to run it? Does my spouse want to run it? Do my kids want to run? It might give you pause before you decided to do it based on what some of these people are going through. And the money that is being dumped at these campaigns is obscene. I mean, our founding fathers never could have imagined a political system where tens of millions of dollars are spent in a congressional race. I mean, I get a call from a colleague out in the Midwest, another $4 million is being dumped into her against her in the campaign. Another $10 million in outside money. I mean, how do you deal with that, right? So we need to be able to push back this tide, this anti-democratic tide. We need to elect people, Democrats and Republicans, who actually want to clean up the system and take the money out of the system. We ought to have public financing of campaigns. Or we ought to have strict limits on how much you can spend on campaigns. I think you get better decisions that way, and we ought not to reward bad behavior. I would say I was up in New Hampshire. I mean, Maggie Hassan and Chris Pappas have tough races, and I don't know much about their opponents other than what I have read. And I'm going to tell you, I mean, if I'm in the business community, I may not agree with every vote that they take on things, but boy, you can work with her. You can work with him. Their opponents, election denial. I mean, really? They're going to sit down and talk to you about fiscal policy, or they're going to talk to you about how to help small business. They're into the conspiracy world, and and if those are the people who are going to be the heads of committees, or going to be the people with the most influence, you're not going to get anything done. And we need a lot done. Look, we're coming out of, a once-in-a-lifetime, hopefully, pandemic where the entire global economy shut down. We are trying to reopen. We're learning about all these supply chain issues, and inflation has resulted, by the way, not just in the United States, but all over the world. I mean, when people say to me, "Oh, McGovern, you're responsible. You and Biden are responsible for inflation," I'm like, "Okay," and I said, "But you have inflation in Australia. You're responsible for that too." Well, you really think I'm responsible for inflation in Australia and in the UK? I mean, come on. Maybe you went to Trump University, but that's the bottom line is it's just not. We have to start, and this is where you all come into, is start helping people understand the realities and the way you fix it. The CHIPS bill that we passed is going to help rebuild supply chains here, which is going to help lower prices. I mean, the infrastructure bill that we passed is going to be helpful in the long term because here in Massachusetts, we're an old state. We have bridges that are older than most of the other states in this country. I mean, I did a Google search of structurally deficient bridges in the 2nd Congressional District, in my district. I'm lucky I'm alive. I mean, it is scary how bad our infrastructure is here. We now have the money to fix it. We have the money to fix it, right? The Inflation Reduction Act, I mean, the monies that are going to help, these new companies, clean energy, battery companies, I go right down the list, all these new jobs, all these new opportunities, at the same time saving our planet, all that is good, right? So that's about solutions to some of the problems that we're faced with. Now, I wish you could fix everything overnight. That's not the way things happen. I get it that people are impatient. We're trying to lower costs, pass the prescription drug bill that helps lower costs for senior citizens. Come January, out-of-pocket expenses for insulin for seniors is going to be capped at $35. All that is good, right? I wish you could all accelerate quicker, but you can't just go from one extreme to the other like overnight. So things are, there are some good things that are in the works that will, I think, get us back on the right track. But we need to be talking about those things, not about, should we impeach Joe Biden? Should we throw Maxine Waters off of the Financial Services Committee? Or, let's do another special investigation on Hunter Biden, or let's go back and overturn the 2020 election. I mean, that's just a waste of time that will further polarize this country and get nothing done for anybody. And so, look, this is my hope. I believe in the goodness of people in this country. I mean, I bump into people every day who are, who get it and who are good and who love this country of all political persuasions. I got to believe that good people going to the polls on Tuesday are going to be thinking about some of this stuff. Are going to be thinking about how the team that wants to be in control reacted to the assassination attempt against Speaker Pelosi and her husband. I mean, my parents didn't raise me to behave like that. Your parents didn't raise you to believe like that. I can't believe their parents would raise them to behave that way. I mean, my mother still, when I'm on the House floor debating, my phone will vibrate, and it's my mother. Watch your mouth. You're too mean. I mean, so my mother still reels me in. I'm like, I say nothing compared to what they say. No, but you be a gentleman, right? I mean, so it's hard, right? But yeah. But I can't believe that we're at this moment, and we have so much to lose. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your honesty today about the threat to democracy and what we all can do instead of complaining about it, but actually to be part of trying to fix the problems that all of us are bemoaning. And I forget who you attributed it to, but you just told us maybe 20 minutes ago that someone advised you it's easy to point out problems, it's hard to know the solutions. Right. It's easy for all of us to gripe about what's going on. It's hard for us to figure out what to do about it. But you've inspired me, and I'm sure others today, to try and do more than we're doing. Because right now, all I do is complain about it, and I can't point to one thing that I'm doing to try and help fix it as much as you are. So on behalf of all of us, thank you very much for being honest.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Only one other thing I want to point out is you made a point. You've made so many good points today that one small point you made might be lost in all that, so I want to underscore it for you. You talked about the importance of staff. We are working to try and get some legislation passed, and we are working with Bella, your health staffer, and you not only talk the talk, you walk the walk with the staff you hire. Please don't ever lose her.
Okay, well, I will tell her. Yeah, no, she's wonderful.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, with that, we have the congressman for a couple more minutes next door to talk on hunger, and I know a lot of people are here to hear his views on what happened at the White House hunger conference. And we look forward to having you next door. If you'd like a picture with the congressman, come down front and